Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us live here on Facebook. I'm really excited about today. We're going to go into part 2 with Cindy Hatcher on parenting to our children's gift. So many times our kids are showing signs of the gifting that they have, but what can we do as parents to help, number one, identify that gift, and then help nurture and help the child develop that gift and begin to operate in that from a very young age. So this is really exciting. It's a hot topic. It's something that's really valuable in the family, and I'm excited to have Cindy again with us for a second time to go deeper into this. And if you're here live and you have a question, please feel free to put it on the comments, and then we'll get to the questions as we can. So I'm here joined with Cindy. Thank you again for coming on. Really
thank you for having me.
Yeah. It's going to be a good topic today. I know that last Friday we got into this, and there's a lot of good information. If you are here watching and you didn't get to watch that, you can go back on through the page and find that live and watch it again. So I'm excited to have everyone here with us. And again, thank you for joining us. How was your weekend?
Oh, busy as always, but good. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they go so fast.
Always have a project.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm going to turn you loose, and we'll begin this discussion.
Okay. Well, I thought maybe I could just kind of recap a little bit, just in case there are others who weren't able to see the first video. There are several stories I like to tell when trying to explain the motivational design gifts. It's not common knowledge or common language sometimes for people. We tend to think, like I said, about personality or temperament. It really is more about I guess temperament's probably a good word. It's really about wiring. It's about instinct. And the reason why I love this particular teaching is because it will draw us back to the Word, and it will draw us back to God Himself. It actually shows a characteristic, if you will, of God that He put inside of each one of us. And so as parents, I think it's important that we recognize our motivational design gift, because we will parent out of our motivational design gift, and for example, a ruler will want to have things very organized and timely, and to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late, kind of parent. And so the way that they may add pressure in terms of discipline or in terms of even doing household chores, things like that, it can come across teaching a particular child that they have to do things a certain way. It's my way or the highway kind of, if there's that very authoritative kind of authoritarian parenting. In the negative, of course, but we need to be able to recognize that as children, they're going to respond based on their motivational design gift. So it doesn't always mean that they're trying to be rebellious. It doesn't mean that they're intentionally trying to work against your rules or your way. It's just they're going to respond differently. And so it is important as parents to not just parent out of our design gift, but to pay attention to what the design gift of our child is, because we might need to adjust. We might need to recognize that some kids might need a little more structure. Some might actually need a little more freedom to be able to choose, if you will. I used to joke and say with kids, you don't like laying out clothes for my child when they were little, and I'd say you don't have a choice with wearing warm clothes when it's cold outside. You know what I mean? Right. But you can choose this or you can choose this. I'm still giving you a choice. It's like you don't have a choice to not do your homework. You will do your homework, but I'll let you choose a blue pen or a black pen or whatever, So we still want to offer choices, and some kids need them or they'll come across somewhat rebellious, if you will. It's just one example. So that's why I think this teaching is really powerful. But I also love it because it is based on a study of God's Word. It's based on the sevens in Scripture and how each of the 7 gifts actually are seen in the different sevens in Scripture. And I know that that's really hard for me to explain here all at once, but I'm going to give you one example. So there's the furniture in the tabernacle. There's 7 different furniture that's listed in Scripture, from the very outer courts to the inner courts. So the very first thing that you see when you come into the outer courts, you're going to see the brazen altar, and that's where a sacrifice had to be given. And so when you parallel the operation of that particular furniture, sacrifice was made, a calf had to be slaughtered, there's blood everywhere. Well, it symbolizes that it's about principle. There's right or wrong. There was law. A sacrifice was needed. It's a black or white kind of issue. And that's exactly how prophet perceivers will operate. They're very black and white. They're very principle oriented, almost aggressively so. So you can see that shown in that first item of furniture. In the second item of furniture is going to be the brazen laver, and that is the essentially a silver bowl that was hammered out so that you would be able to see your reflection in the water there, where the priests would cleanse their hands after having made the sacrifice. And so that symbolizes the servant gifting, because they're reflective. They are gentle. They are a cleansing kind of personality. They're safe. We often call them the porcupine huggers because they love everybody, but they are particularly drawn toward helping people, that practical sense of, just washing the hands, if you will. In the third gift, when we start moving from the outer court to the inner court, and we start going into the teacher, which is represented by the table of showbread. The showbread is the bread of life. That's the bread of God. We think about communion when we think about the bread there, and that there would be different loaves, if you will, for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We also consider the word, and Jesus being the word, the bread of life. And so teachers will have that need for nourishment, that need for wisdom, that need for understanding. And so there's a parallel there with the teacher gifting. With the exhorter, which would come next, would be the candelabrum, right? The menorah. And so you have the 7 spirits of God there represented. You have the pure oil. So we need our exhorters not just to be shiny and bright and casting light inside the tent. We want the oil to be pure. We want their hearts to be pure when they're operating at the highest potential of the exhorter gifting. But they are bringing light. They are declaring the light of God and casting a vision for lots of different people to be able to be known by the Lord. Mm-hmm. And then there's the giver that's represented by the incense that was burned. The prayers of the saints is represented by incense in Scripture. And so the giver is often represented in that worship, in that place of intimacy that the giver is able to give and resource fragrantly throughout the entire tabernacle inside. And then we go into the Holy of Holies, and there you have the Ark of the Covenant, and that is the ruler with the law inside, so we have the tablets, the ruler is very law-oriented in the sense of what's right and wrong, and bringing order to things, and being able to establish the rule of law, if you will, and how something is supposed to be done systemically or structurally. And so we see that with the 10 Commandments, the law that God established. And then at the very top of the Ark of the Covenant is where the cherubim come together. This is where Moses met with God face to face. It is the mercy seat that they call it, right? It's this place of connection and intimacy. And there you see the mercy motivational design gift, again, about intimacy, about worship. This is where David brought in the worshipers against the law, mind you, at that time, to be able to have intimacy with God. And those priests and servants and worshipers didn't get struck down, right? Like, remember, only the Holy of Holy, was the one day of the year, Yom Kippur, that the high priest could go in and give a sacrifice at that place of connection. And yet when David did it, because of his heart for worship, he was a mercy-wired man, and being able to have that place of worship, the Lord honored it and honored everything that he did, even though it was quote unquote against the rules, against the law. And so you see an aspect of each of these 7, and I know I'm just really skimming this, but you see an aspect of each of the 7 furniture, and it parallels with each of the 7 motivational design gifts when we talk about people and their wiring. There's other 7s that line up with that, and I won't get into all of that today, but when you start to see the patterns of the similarities of these different sevens. It really is amazing. In fact, it's probably my favorite part of the whole teaching outside of the fruit that we see in relationships. So for me, that's the exciting part, is that this does show us an aspect of God himself and how then it can be seen in our relationships. And so to me, that goes even beyond just parenting, right? Like this is how the Father wants to impart to us and even parent to us as his kids. So,
and most of us, I think it's safe to say that most of us really didn't even discern or discover our own gift of those seven until later in life. You know, certainly beyond childhood. What an amazing gift to be able to help identify and help nurture and bring that out of our children, even at a very young age. I mean, that sets them up for an amazing, a great start. So number one, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So number one, just know that you have purpose. I mean, just the element alone, that alone says that, God has given me purpose. I know that changed my life. You know, before I really discovered that, we go along life and yeah, college is great and school is great. And we do those things. But then when you discover your God-given purpose and your identity, it's like, okay, now I can really thrive. And it adds another fuel. So I'm excited to think that we can really instill that and draw that out of our kids at a young age.
Oh gosh. And yes, much earlier. And that's why I love this teaching so much, because it brought such freedom to me, so that I would be, when I first learned and discovered this, I was an adult, so as I started having my own children, the same thing, I was asking the Lord, okay, what gift are they? I want to get to know their little personalities. And, you barely get a glimpse, when they're toddlers, on some level, and then you see your children develop over time. But and it can shift a little bit. I mean, you can kind of think, I used to think my kid was maybe one way, when they were really small or under 10. And now that they're closer to teenagers, I see a little bit more of a different side. Right. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, you're probably wired more like this, And we also don't want to forget that we respond to the nurture, not just nature, right? So the nurture side of things. So how I and my husband would have parented my kids, or how the rules that we have in our home and all of that can influence that person's design gift as well, like I was saying earlier. And so being able to really get to know your children and to know how they're wired. And I think most parents do. I mean, if I sat down and said, tell me about each of your kids, the words that would come out of your mouth would begin to describe strengths and weaknesses within them. Right. And we know that everybody has room to grow and to mature, and all of that. And that's why I do love this teaching as well, is because it gives grace, not just a label. It gives grace to know that we can grow and mature this gifting, but we still have to identify the purpose of our kid. If like my son, as much as my husband and I love sports, and we played sports, collegiately and competitively, and all of that, we really wanted our kids to do sports. Well, my daughter, when she was younger, we got her into soccer, which was my main sport, and got her into all kinds of other things. And we tried everything. And we did piano, we did dance, because she was the girl that would sing a song, memorize a song just like that. I mean, we're listening to Dora the Explorer CDs, and within 2 seconds, she knows if that's the song or not. Without them even saying anything. She just had such an ear for music, and both of my husband are into music too. And so we're like, wow, okay, she's got this music gift. And she would sing, and she'd put on us little shows when she was little, and she'd dress up and do little things. So when we got her into musical theater, and we put her into, an art class or a dance class, or these things to try to develop her creativity. And pretty quickly she was like, I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to do the same song and dance every single time getting ready for May show. It was fun when it was a different song and dance every week, but she did not want to do the same one over and over again for a show. It wasn't fun anymore, so it stole the thunder out of her, because she is such an exhorter and she wants to entertain, but she didn't want to do the work.
Right.
As an 8-year-old or whatever, she didn't want to do the consistent work to put the same song and dance on over it. She's like, I'll just put on shows at home or whatever, and eventually, and over time, she began to grow a competitive spirit, and she found volleyball as her sport thing. Now, I would have wished she had done soccer. but she found her thing. And this is where she enjoys a challenge. She's able to encourage and be a part of a team. She's not going to be one who wanted to do like a single sport or any of that kind of a thing, you know. So I began, as I nurtured her and parenting her, trying to give her every opportunity. I thought, oh man, she'd be great at musical theater and she would do this or that. I had to listen to her feedback. She had to tell me, yeah, that kind of fits, but not really. You know,
Right.
And so that's what you do when parenting your kid. You try to put them in what they're going to be good at, what they're gifted in. My son is a natural artist, and so I'm doing everything I can to give him all the sketching pencils and all the, you know, pads and the courses and the things that will help develop that gift that really comes natural to him. My husband wanted him to play baseball, so he's done baseball for seasons or whatever, but that's not his thing really.
Yeah.
And so you have to mold your kid in the way that they should go, and the more you understand their motivations, not just their gift or talent, if you will. That word gift can be interchanged there, but a talent is very different than the motivational design gift, what they're motivated to do. Everyone can be an artist, for example, but not everybody's going to do it the same way.
Yeah.
Some are going to have, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that, you know, as we do this, we're discovering strengths in our children and weaknesses. And sometimes, especially with these gifts, they can be both, right? So one of my daughters, at the age of like 4 and 5 years old, she was waking herself up, getting herself dressed. She aligned her closet, like there was 1 inch of space in between each item of clothing. Her shoes were neatly like put away, and nobody taught her to do that.
Right.
You know, and that's just how she was wired. And that's a great gift, right? Parents, I loved that. However, like I know that now, like as she got older, I realized that she does not like change. She loves structure. She wants everything, and if there's a plan, the plan had better not change. So the weakness in her is to like learn to be flexible, and plans will change. It's not the end of the world, but it is interesting to identify that and see the difference, and how I parent her is a lot different than my other daughters or my son. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's fun. People are just fun. Little humans are fun. When we start talking about our kids and how God, made each of us, it just makes you step back and go, man, God's just a genius, and how he put each little person together, with a little bit of your DNA and your wife's DNA and all of that. And then how they just come up with stuff that you're like, how did they learn that? How did they do that?
Right.
That's part of their design gift that's inside of them.
Yeah, that is amazing. Would you be able to speak a little bit on, we are, as we discover our children's gifts, or we're questioning maybe this is his or her gift or not. Like for example, the one who loves justice, the one who loves the law in a sense, and the rules and that kind of structure. Between that versus, okay, you've just got an attitude, or this is a little bit of rebellion. What are some of the tips that you might give everybody to help discern between the gift and just something that they've got to work on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, again, if you do the study, I've got the course and I do have a quiz available, so people can try to understand this teaching a little bit better. But even without that, I think the primary thing is you got to connect with your kid in relationship. You have to be able to talk with them, and you have to give them permission to have some way to express their frustrations with you and it not come across as disrespectful. Like I often will ask people, how can your kid be angry with you? If they disagree, how can they be angry with you and it not be counted as disrespect or an attitude? I'm sorry, but when you're angry, that is a, quote, attitude. When you're frustrated by something, you're displaying, quote, an attitude. It doesn't mean you're trying to be disrespectful. It means you don't like the situation. You didn't like the answer no or whatever. They're allowed to have their emotions. What I don't want them to do is throw a tantrum, scream and whine, or throw things, or punch a hole in the wall, or like there's behaviors that we're going to pay attention to. Their volume of their voice, I'm going to pay attention to. Even if I don't like them rolling their eyes at me. I mean, how much power am I going to give to my kids' eye rolling to determine my level of peace? Do you know what I mean? Like how much power we give to our kids to determine where we stand. I think that's a self-care boundary that parents need to recognize, that we don't want to give our kids any power to cause us to, lose it. We need to be able to be the safe, consistent, loving, understanding parent the best way we know how. So when they are upset, even if we told them no and they don't like it, and it does seem like maybe a little bit of rebellion, how is it rebellion? Is it the tone? Is it their eye rolling? Or is it the words they say? I mean, to me, words are more powerful because I'm paying attention to, are they saying something like, well, you're just mean, or you don't know what you're talking about, or I don't really care what you think. I mean, those are all different levels of disrespect and rebellion, in that sense. So I'm going to give them a time to kind of defuse a little bit. I want to give them some time and space to exercise some self-control, help them to be able to breathe. They're emotional. And listen, I know this about brain science. When you're highly emotional, you do not have your thinker side on. Okay, so we've got the right side of our brain is the emotion center. The left side of our brain is our thinker center. It's the easiest way to know how to simplify this, right? Right. And I use my hands a lot. So I talk about, if this is your hand, my hand, if this is your brain, I'm sorry, then when you look at the brain, it grows with the brain stem forward. So when we develop, our brain grows from the back to the front, okay? Our joy center is here at the front. Our fear or fight or flight mechanisms, our natural instinct responses are in the back part, generally speaking. But it's right and versus left hemisphere also. So when we're processing emotion, we're at what we would call level 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. When I lose it, if I flip my lid, right, I disconnect from this thinker part of my brain. I go into all emotional parts of my brain. If my thumb represented the amygdala, which is the banana kind of shaped part of your brain, that's similar to that, that helps control your emotion. If that goes and builds and builds and builds till you flip your lid, everybody knows what that feels like. When you just lose it, right? When you've completely flipped a switch, that's because you just switched from your thinker side of your brain to all emotion now. You no longer have access to that brilliant part of the front part of your brain that connects in joy and relationship, and that is now offline. Anything you would have ever read about good parenting, any tips that you would know about parenting, it just went out the window because now you are all in the emotional processing side. So we as parents have to make sure we never flip our lid to the best of our ability. We have to calm down to stay as calm. When our kid has flipped their lid, we have to help them to calm down. That is not a time to lecture. It's not a time to redirect. It's a time to calm everything down a little bit. So I like to say from a scale of 0 to 10, we need to be at 5 or below, or to bring that part of our brain back connecting, because that is this part of our brain where we connect in relationship. Science will say joy is defined in our brain by I'm with somebody who likes to be with me and I don't have to earn it. This isn't about performance. This isn't about, being good by action. It's about connection. So if I can calm down enough that I can be present with you and I know that you like being with me at this moment, even if we're in conflict or in disagreement, my brain is going to be able to process informationally, not just emotionally. So we have to learn how in that moment, first everybody's got to calm down, and then we have a conversation. Hey, this behavior, what you did by saying those words, by you eye rolling, felt like disrespect to me. And when you did that, this is what I think, this is how I feel, this is what I would like, here's what I plan on doing my part of it. And then we communicate about that, and we let the kid have an opinion too. You don't have to agree. They don't have to agree with you. Right. They have to follow your rules.
So the parent's role in that scenario that you just described, let's say the kid flipped their lid, they lost it. That's really not the time to tell them that they lost it and that they shouldn't lose it, right. And really get on them about that, but rather kind of walk them through and demonstrate, number one, so you can't lose it either. Yes. And, right. I think we've all been guilty of that.
Sure.
And so we have to maintain our own composure, not lose it, and then teach them, in a sense, kind of walk with them in going from level 10 down to level 5 or 4 or 3.
Yes. And one of the first things is, whether it's time and space, if you understand their motivational design gift, or I'll just say introverted, right? If they're more introverted and they need more time to process alone, then they need space. They need that time. They need their music. They need something that's going to help them calm down before you go back in and be able to have a conversation with them. You know, some of them are going to need that. They're not going to be able to sit there and have a conversation with you in that moment. They can't process it. Even if they're not expressing emotion, even if they're not highly emotionally expressive at that moment. If you see your kid shut down and you kind of get that wall, right, and you feel that resistance and they're not really listening to you, they're disconnected. That is not a time to talk with them either. They're still emotional. They're just not crying or yelling or saying anything obvious. If you understand their wiring, then you understand they're going to need time to process for a little bit. They need to distract themselves, listen to music, do something else. They need to think it through a little bit, calm themselves down, and then you can re-engage with the conversation. So there's a lot of layers to this, but the more you understand how your kid is wired, then you'll know what they're going to want from you. You know, some are going to want you to stay there and stay connected. They don't want you to leave and put them in timeout for 30 minutes or whatever. They want to solve it right now. They're going to, I'm sorry, Mom. They're going to apologize really quickly because they're the pleasers, or they want to make sure you're okay. And now they're afraid they're in trouble and please don't take my phone away. And now they're freaking out. And so you got to know your kid. You got to know how they're wired and what kind of response that you need to be able to give to them that helps them settle. Our job is to help them settle.
Right.
We have to, our heart is our responsibility. Our heart is our responsibility. We have to stay in self-control, breathe. So that the first thing I say, breathe. And that's often the first thing I say to my kids. Take a breath. Let's just breathe for a moment. Calm down. And I always have given my kids permission to say, can I just have some time? And if they need time, that's totally okay. But we will come back to this in a few minutes. So I give them 20 minutes, calm down. I come right back and we finish this conversation, and if it spikes up again, we're like, let's keep the volume down. Let's stay calm. Let's just talk it through, because I don't want them not processing with their full brain, if that makes sense.
Right, for sure. I've noticed, even if there's been times where I've tried to make those corrections while they're at level 10, and it's a waste of time. And in fact,
yes.
all it really does is hinder our relationship and pushes them away. And I think that's really the ultimate goal here, is that we maintain and we develop and continue to grow in our relationship with our kids, so that they can really trust us. I know, I went through an experience several years ago where I had to rebuild trust, because I might have been one, busy. We all have jobs and things to do, to where, let's say we have that scenario and we're like, okay, we're going to wait and talk about this when everybody's calmed down. Then life happens and we never go back and talk about it. That's an issue as well. So
it can be. That's why you don't wait too long. I always tell people, 20 minutes, it does not have to be wait till 2 hours later. And I get when life happens, I really do. But I really put this on the parent. It's your job as a parent to go back to the kid and say, you are so important to me, and this issue is important to me. I'm sorry that we have to go take little Sally to her dance class now, but we will have this conversation the minute I drop her off or whatever. So you're coming in the car with me while I go. Something, you have to come up with something that you at least communicate to them. Hey, this isn't over. I haven't forgotten. We will talk about this. And I really strongly encourage you to talk about it before the night is over, because we don't want that to hang on over to the next day. And the word says that, don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, lest you give Satan a foothold. So whether it's anger or hurt or whatever, you need to try to resolve it as quickly as you can.
What I love about that is that when we get into a consistent lifestyle of doing that, we're forming, whether we know it or not, we're forming good habits, we're giving them the skills they need to work with others. If they have a friend, or they, somebody hurts them at school, or they're going to want to go and solve that, but they'll also know not to do it in that moment, which can eliminate a lot of issues at school as well. So, but that's awesome. Right. Yeah, very important. Right.
And for some kids, and this is, especially for, I'll call them the huggers, that your huggy feeler, touchy kids or whatever, sometimes they don't need words right away. Right. They need you to just hold them for a little bit, They need that as soothing. And so if you know, like the love languages, Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, if you know that, and the huggy, their love language is touch, then sometimes they need that and not a conversation right away. So that's another thing to just know strategy wise when you're dealing with your kid. The more you know how they respond to love, how they respond to feedback. Not every kid needs a lecture, They don't need the 25 steps to how to do this differently. And if you're teacher wired, for example, that's going to be your go-to. That's kind of what you do, And so this is where you learning your design gift and learning your kid's design gift, you can come up with those strategies when things like this happen, where you might have the need to teach something, but they're not ready for it. They're not there yet. And so you might need to do what they need, sit down, hug, watch a cartoon for 30 minutes, chill or whatever, get off topic, but then come back to it and say, okay, so now I really feel like I need to walk you through what I need to kind of explain to you. And I want to give you an opportunity to communicate also. And you might even as a parent, let them talk first.
Right.
Tell me what happened. How did you see this? What got triggered? What were you believing in that? It didn't have to be 20 questions, but just getting them to kind of be able to share instead of it just you telling them what they did wrong or whatever and giving the correction and then that's it. And then they're like, okay, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's not really a resolution,
That's true. That's good.
I also think that just saying I'm sorry is not good. I think you have to say the words, will you forgive me for fill in the blank. Will you forgive me for doing this or saying that? Because sometimes you'll just say, I'm sorry. I'm like, yeah, why are you sorry? Sorry you got caught? Sorry you got sorry you got in trouble? Sorry. Like, what do you really say? I'm sorry that we had an argument and then had a fight and now I can't have dessert. What are you sorry for, really?
I'm sorry that I got punished.
Yeah. And so, or you just so I don't know, but if you've ever done this, hey, tell your little brother you're sorry, you force them to make up, which I still think is a good thing. But if you'll use that phrase, why are you forgiving? Like, are you able to forgive? Are you asking for forgiveness? Using those words, will you forgive me for, here's the wrong that I did that I recognize. Right. So I can, for example, if I grounded my kids from something or whatever, and they're really mad because they're missing like the party of the year, someone's birthday party or something, and I'm like, consequence, and so I can say, well, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me for causing you to miss this birthday party that's important to you? I can say that. I'm still giving you the consequence. My intention was not to harm you, was not to make you feel guilty or to have to miss your friend's party. I'm sorry for that. But can you recognize that you're the one that did this action that created the consequence that now naturally, do you know what I'm saying? So right. I think we can take a one down in humility and say, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. Will you forgive me for hurting your feelings? That was not my intent, but this is a natural consequence. And so there's a way that you can help them lower their defenses by doing that as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well, because if they're defensive about the result of their misbehavior, then I think it's harder for them to really learn from that, right? Because they're in a defensive mode, that they almost kind of, in a sense, relieve themselves of that responsibility. Because now, mom or dad, you're just the mean one. And
you're the bad guy.
Right. So it's really not my fault. It's yours because you don't have to do this. And I hear this a lot. Well, this doesn't happen to my friends, or my other friends can do this, or they get away with that. And like, you're so hard. And it's like, well,
what's your answer? My answer is I'm not their mother.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they were coming to me for parenting advice, I would tell them to do it differently, but I'm not their mother.
I tell my kids that, well, I'm your dad.
Exactly.
And I'm responsible for you, and I'm responsible to help you to prepare you for life.
That's right.
So I'm sorry this isn't happening to your friends that really should be, but you're going to, when you reach adulthood, you're going to be ready, right?
I would say, lucky you. You have a parent who cares about you and is is fully invested in molding you and shaping you to becoming the best version of you and a good person in society. And you're going to be successful. And some of your friends may not. I hate to say that, but it's true.
Yeah.
I care enough about you to do this. So is this hard? Maybe so. But I know you're worth it. I know you're better than this. And finding language where we say that, I know you're better than this. And so it's my job to call up the gold in you, is for you to develop you and to help shape you into the person that I know that God has placed inside of you. I know this about you. Yes. And it's my job to be able to help you with that. And I take my job very seriously because I love you. Yeah. And that's never going to change. You don't always have to agree. That's okay. I'm willing to hear what you think or what you feel about it. It's okay if you don't agree with me. You're still going to have to follow my rules. You're still going to end up having the consequence. But we don't have to display anger. We don't have to use fear in parenting. I don't believe we don't have to manipulate or to overpower our children. Honestly, I think it's a faster and much more effective approach for us to stay humble and to say, I'm really sad that you're having to miss that. I'm not going to say, well, it's your fault.
Suck it up.
No, I mean, it's like, sucks to be you. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say, well, you shouldn't have done this. I'm not going to point out blame. I'll talk about the consequence here, but I can show sadness for them. Mm-hmm. This is a sad thing. I'm sad too. I'm sad that you can't go do that thing that you wanted to do. It does make me sad because I know you could have made a different choice, but you didn't.
Right.
Yeah, that's
powerful. Yeah, it is an important thing that the parents stand up and really become active in that kind of parenting.
Yes.
When you just push blame or use fear or manipulation, when we do that, number one, it really doesn't work because then they've learned how to weave through that and get around the manipulation. Yep. And the way they do that, they learn how to do it themselves because they learned it from you. And then they become expert manipulators, and now you find that they're manipulating you. And then if you're in a situation where you're a single parent or maybe you went through a divorce, now they're manipulating the parents even greater. They have a greater chance of manipulating parents because now they're playing different ones.
Right.
So
and
really
consistency is the key. Consistency is the key. Following through with what you say you're going to do. If you issue a consequence, make it fit the crime. Right. Don't go, well, you're grounded for a month, and then you give them back their phone in 2 days. Like what you just told them is your word does not matter, that you lie, that you're not consistent, that I can beg and push or be on my good behavior for 2 days, and you're weak, and they're not saying it, but this is what they're thinking because now they know, oh, mom doesn't really mean it.
Yeah, they're absorbing it.
Dad doesn't really mean it. They're just mad or whatever. And so they don't take it to heart. Then when you're like, no, here's the consequence. And it's going to be hard and sharp according to whatever that consequence is. And then here's the thing. If it continues, I like to give warnings. If it continues or happens again, the consequence is going to go up a notch. Because I want you to learn from this. So we have to make our consequences fit the crime, let it be balanced, but it also has to be painful enough that they actually don't want to do that wrong again, whatever it is, that they learned from it the first time. So the whole point is natural consequences have to be painful enough to be able to cause them to want to change, But again, if our heart is connected toward them in relationship, I'm sorry that this is having to happen. I can't be the bad guy if I'm sad. Yeah. You can try to call me the bad guy. I'm not the bad guy. I'm sad for you. This was your choice. I'm not blaming, but you help them to understand this is the natural progression. And if we don't learn from this time, the consequence is going to be greater. And I would rather teach you this in our home under my control than you having to learn it the hard way in the world.
Right. The hard way, the consequences will often be a lot more severe.
Yeah. When my kids were little, I would talk about rules in general. We have rules in the city. You have to wear a seatbelt. Well, why do we wear seatbelts? Safety, blah, blah, blah. It's not just a rule. There's purpose. Why do we stop at red lights? Well, what would happen if I decided, I'm going to ignore the red light. I'm not going to wear my seatbelt, And we would talk about rules in the city. Well, I was like, well, guess what? We all have rules to follow. Mm-hmm. And we have rules in our house to follow. and they're there for a reason, for a purpose. There's always going to be something behind it. Now, if I can give that understanding and that purpose, then I do. I don't think we have to explain everything all the time, but I certainly don't think it's fair to say, well, you just do what I tell you to do.
Right.
You know, I don't.
Without reason, without just because I said so.
Yeah, that's not parenting.
Right. So
we want obedience.
Yeah.
We want obedience, sure, but we want to teach them that they have power to decide,
Right.
you know, and we don't want to control. We don't want to parent out of control and fear.
Yes.
We want them to obey because they want to, because they love us. Now, that's hard. When they're younger, especially, we do have to teach them natural consequences, you know, and they're going to test it. That's what kids do, especially when they're toddlers and teenagers. I usually tell people when you see a toddler respond, that's a hint into how they're going to be as a teenager, you know. So,
you know, I just want to take a minute. I want to encourage all the parents here. If you're listening to this and it sounds like, well, parenting is a lot harder than, you know, what I'm throwing, or maybe I'm realizing that there are some things that I need to change in my parenting style, you know, because maybe you're one that goes from 0 to 10 emotionally, like over, you know, in a second. Listen, I want you to know you're not alone. This happens to all of us at some point or another. What we're describing and what we're talking about today is a great way to be effective in your parenting. How many of you love to waste your time? We don't. We don't have time to waste. And I know I'm looking back at my life, and I'm looking at situations, especially as we're talking here, to where I've wasted time while I was trying to be a good parent. When I was trying, you know, I've been the one. I'm guilty of responding to my kids while they're angry and at that level 10, and I realized that I was wasting my time, and all I did was hurt our relationship. But to be the bigger person and be the parent and get control of my own emotions and step into it is helpful. That's the way to really maximize our time, maximize parenting. And I want to encourage everybody to really take heart to this. Parenting, it's not easy, but it's not hard either. Once you learn a few skills, you'll, I think, be able to maximize your parenting efforts. And so you mentioned earlier that you have some resource on these gifts, on the motivational gifts that could help people. Share a little bit about that.
I have a free quiz that's online. The link is now active. We were having some tech issues and stuff as I've been building that out, but it's at cindyhatcher.com / the M Motivational Design Gift, so MDG Quiz 1. And so I'll put that link here in there later after the broadcast. And awesome. You can go to that, and it's a free quiz so that you can take that and it'll pop up what your motivational gift is. And if you want to have your kid do it or do it for them, you know, if you will. Awesome. And kind of see what might pop up. And it may not be the exact one. This is what I like to tell people. Just because that's the one that shows up on your test, you know, it's subjective because it's your answers in your test and it's on a Likert scale. So, you know, depending on how you answer could tweak your response a little bit. So what I like to do is in the course, I will be doing a course launching in February so that we'll walk people through the teaching of each of them and do a little bit of coaching on, okay, so I feel like I'm a tie between this one or this one, and I like to be able to kind of help people figure out how to break the tie. And you just can't do that in a quiz. This is not a black or white, oh, here's your answer kind of quiz. Yeah. There's a lot of nuance.
Parenting it's a relationship, right? It's a relationship just with our kids. It's a relationship just as it is we have a relationship with our spouse, friends, neighbors. And one thing that I know about relationships is that we always are in a constant state of change. Yes. You know, it's like navigating a boat. You don't just set the wheel in one direction and go. Like you're constantly making small little changes to maintain the course that you want to go in. I just want to take a minute and share some of the people that are commenting. Rhonda is saying that this is really good information. Thank you, Rhonda, for tuning in today. Brittany says that she's a brand new new mom over here. Her little girl will be here any day now. Congratulations, Brittany. That's exciting. She says that she's happy that she found this page and it's good information. So if you're here live and you have a question for Cindy, we've got just a few minutes left. Go ahead and type out that question. We want to get that answered. So it's your chance to get some into her brain, and so do that now before we're just about done.
And if I can just add, too, I want to encourage parents. This, you said it wasn't hard, and something in me kind of went, it is hard. It is hard. It's hard work. In fact, I often tell people outside of marriage is the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's because it is the most intimate relationships that you'll have is your spouse and your children. Right. And they have the most power and influence on your heart. Relationships are the most important thing in life. And so it is hard work. It is worth it. And that's the key is you have to be able to invest in you as a parent because that is the first thing that we do is beat ourselves up for not being good enough or oh gosh, I'm going to mess up this little life that God gave me. And we start bringing up all of our own insecurities or maybe our own stuff from our family life growing up or, especially if we didn't have a great family life or parents that showed us the way and the good way. The good news is you can always learn. As you were saying, you can always learn more. You can always get resources like this. There are books, there are podcasts, there are all kinds of training and stuff. Parenting accurately, as I understand it, is all about doing that, to do it well, yes. To do it well and to do it with a loving heart and to see your children be able to become the best that they can be and that it's worth it. It's worth the hard work. It is worth the trouble, if you will,
Yeah. Well, it is definitely hard work. But when you work hard and you enjoy it and you see fruit, it doesn't feel like as hard, right? It's worth it. There's a reward. So that like what you're doing. Yeah. I mean, I've spent many times, and I'm sure most parents can identify like in tears with our children. We hurt with them. We go through things with them. And so, yeah, for sure. I agree 100%. There's nothing like it in the world. It's a journey. And it's a process, right. But it is enjoyable. It can be enjoyable, though it will not always be. There will be days where
I always feel it,
right, where we feel it more than others. Definitely, completely worth it. Rhonda just chimed in and said that it is hard work, but completely worth it. Absolutely, I agree 100%. For sure,
they're our greatest treasures. So. I think it's just important that parents know there's always more to learn, there's always more to grow. And if we stay humble and teachable and that we really are able to honor what God gave us in our kids and to just love them the best of our ability. My kids are getting older and I'll tell them, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm not the perfect parent. I still will make mistakes on occasion and I'm the therapist. Like I'm trained in this. I tell my kids that too. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm a therapist. I am going to use the things that I know work. You may or may not like them, but I always take a position of humility with them so that I stay connected to their heart so that they know I'm doing everything I know to do out of love.
Right.
And as long as they know that my heart's intent is that way, I let them disagree with me on occasion. I let them tell me their feedback. I give them the ability to have a voice because we're in relationship. Now, I still get final say. I'm still the mom,
right.
But there are many occasions where, they've made some good points and we've been able to talk things through. I want to raise kids who have the ability to be able to defend themselves, to be able to communicate well their point of view, to correct miscommunication or misbehavior. I want them to accept personal responsibility. So I want that engagement. I want that conversation from them. Yeah. And so I have to, like I said, I have to give them space to be able to process and to do that. They're not robots. They're not going to respond always so respectfully and we kind of have to be able to give them some grace for that and us have the ability to be able to do that too, to hold that space for them and to be able to not beat ourselves up after, right. To not shame yourself, to not beat yourself up for feeling like a failure as a parent. You've got to be able to stay encouraged and staying connected with resources like Parenting Accurately to be able to really help encourage us and motivate us to, like you said, steer that rudder and keep going and pursuing the goal.
Well, and one thing I realized about parenting is that a lot of times we can go to a parenting class and we're thinking, okay, I'm going to learn how to parent better. So we listen to a podcast or a teaching and we're thinking, I'm going to fix my kids. Mm-hmm. And then we get into that and we realize, I'm the one that I need to tweak this. I need to change the way that I'm doing this, or my approach is wrong, or maybe I really just need to humble myself. And we say, ouch, and it's more of an internal thing, and God's working on us that will enable us to do a better job parenting.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's good.
Not going to be hard.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. It's worth it. That's the hard work, really. That's the hard work, is making sure that, as we are working and training our kids, we're also, not being hypocrites, that we're demonstrating what we're trying to teach.
Right.
And everybody can say ouch right now.
Yes.
I've been there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, definitely appreciate your time again. I want to. We're going to come back in just a moment, but I want to share a quick event that the next event that we have coming up is on January 16th, this Thursday. Libby Jane is going to be joining us at 3:00 on Pacific time, and we're going to be talking about how to create an emotionally safe home. This is going to. Libby is a wellness expert, and we're going to dive into a really good and important conversation about ensuring that our kids and that our teens have a home and an environment where they feel safe in sharing how they feel, how they're, whatever they're going through with their parents. So definitely you're going to want to mark that down, find the event, like it, or say, schedule that you're going so that you'll get a reminder. But you're not going to want to miss that. That's going to be a really good time. So Cindy, any last words or thoughts about what we're talking about today?
No, I just want to encourage every mom and dad who's out there listening to just not give up ever. That hope, my point of view, hope biblically is a confident expectation of good. And so if we can hang on to hope, right, that's the key. And we know that everything that we're doing, if our heart is in the right place, if we'll stay connected with God and connected with our kids, then we really can't fail. Love is the driving force. And so as long as we stay pure to that, I think that's the most important thing, is to be able to give yourself grace and just keep going, stay in hope.
Yes, that's awesome. Love is the driving force. It must always be the driving force. Mm-hmm. So if you are listening today and you've been encouraged by what you have heard, I'd like you to leave a comment, send us a message, or leave a comment here in the event, and just explain what has helped you. I'd love to get some feedback from you on specifically how parenting accurately is helping you. Also, feel free to ask any questions. We're here to serve you as the parents, and we want to take time to do what we can to help you in your parenting efforts. Also, please, as we mentioned, this is a brand new work. Please get connected with us, share the page with others, share the broadcast with others. That would really help us a lot in getting the word out there. We talked earlier about we don't want to waste time. The more people that we can get involved and get this word to, the maximize effort that we'll have. And so thank you again for everybody's support. And Cindy, I know you mentioned last time, what is parenting accurately to you?
Parenting accurately to me is parenting every child in the way that they should go. There's a scripture that says, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they'll not depart from it. And I believe that when you train up a child, when you parent that child according to their motivational design gift, you're training them with what God put inside of them, and you help mold that. So that to me is parenting accurately.
Awesome. That's awesome. Very good. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on Thursday.